Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Gaur Premanandi.
Thank you so much for the Kirtan Prabhu. So, Hare Krishna devotees, I'm just going to introduce Prabhuji in a quick minute. Syamarupa Prabhu first came in contact with the Hare Krishna movement in the autumn of 1986. The devotees were on Harinam in Chicago Roger Park, distributing Prasadam, the Atma magazine, as well as chanting the holy name. Being attracted to the chanting, he began to attend temple programs regularly and has participated in the Boston Yatra since 1992. Shamrup Prabhu has been accepted by Sri Niranjan Swami as a disciple and was given his first initiation in 2005 and second in 2015. Thank you so much for giving us your association today, Prabhu. I hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. See, Om Agyanatimanandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshu Unmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhagumangate Girim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakapatru Bashakri Pasundubhyai Vachapatinam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, good evening, dear devotees, Hare Krishna. So, I'm very happy and honored to be invited to speak one more time to our congregation. And for those who are listening on YouTube, welcome. So, although it's been a few weeks since the holiday had passed, I thought I would like to speak on Markine Bhagavad Dharma. Markine Bhagavad Dharma, of course, is the poem that Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada composed when he arrived to America for the very first time. He was, of course, aboard the steamship Jaladuta, which was a long, arduous trek. He had suffered not only many inconveniences, but he also suffered a heart attack after several days of seasickness and nausea. And of course, he had a very beautiful dream when he was on that ship that Lord Krishna was personally towing the boat to America. And of course, he arrived in September 17th, 1965, at the early morning hours. The ship was, and of course, he had passed through customs. And he went on a walking tour with the ship's captain. He got to see Boston. And during that time, he had the inspiration to compose this beautiful poem. So I thought we'd do is first sing it together. The words are on the screen. I also put a link in the chat, and maybe someone can copy and paste that back in the chat for those who don't, if they want to pull it up on your own monitor. And so we'll sing it through. We'll read the translation, and then maybe I'll speak a few words, but I would like to start that way. So, Markine Bhagavad Dharma Ki Jai. Bodho Kripa Kare Krishna Adamera Prati Kilagi Yanileheta Kodo Eva Gati Bodho Kripa Kare Krishna Adamera Prati Kilagi Yanileheta Kodo Eva Gati Ache Kichukaya Taba E Anumane Neha Keno Ani Bene Ugrasane Ache Kichukaya Taba E Anumane Nahe Kenu Ani Ben E Ugrasane Raja Tamagune Era Sabai Achana Vasudeva Kataruchi Nahe Se Prasana Rajastamo Euna Era Sabai Anachana Vasudeva Kataruche Nahe Se Prasana Tabe Jari Tabe Kripa Hoy Ahuti Ki Sakale Isambhava Hoy Tume Se Katuki Tabe jati taba kripa hoy ai hutuki sakali sambhava hoy tumi se katuki kibave bujale tada buje se rasa eta kripa koro prabhu kore nija bhasha ebave bujile tada buje se rasa eta kripa koro prabhu kore nija bhasha tomara ichaya sabha hoy maya ba tomara ichaya nasha mayara parasha tomara ichaya sabha hoy maya ba tomara ichaya nasha mayara parasha taba icha hoy jari tadera udara bujibe nichai tabe kata se tomara taba icha hoy jari tadera udara bujibe nishai tabe kata se tomara bhagavater kata se taba avatara dirahaya shune jari kane para para bhagavater kata se taba avatara dirahaya shune jari kane kane barvar Srinvatam sa Krishna Kata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Rida Tashtosi Abhadrani Vito Nanti Sudhitam Satam Nasta Praeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Tada Rajas Tamota Bhava Kamalobhaya Chaye Cheta eter anavritam stitam sattve prasaditi evam pasana manasho bhagavat bhakti yogata bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate bijate hridaya grantis chedyante sarva samshaya shiyante chasya karmani drishta et manashvare Rajasthamohaite tabe paibe nishtara Hridaya abhadrasha kuche behitara Se kori bujhabo kata paro se chahi Kudra amidina hina kono shakti nahi atacha enecho prabhu kata boli bade jetomara icha prabhu kodo e bade Akila Jagata Guru Bachana se ama Alankrita koriba kamata tomara taba kripa horde mo kata shurabe shuniya sabara shoka duka je kuchipe Aniya Chojati Prabhu Amara Nachate Nacheo Nacheo Prabhu Se Mahate Nacheo Nacheo Prabhu Nachata Se Mate Kastera Putila Jada Nacharo Se Mate Bhakti Nai Beda Nai Name Kubadaro Bhakti Vedanta Nam Ebe Sarkakaro Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Guru. So, we'll read the translation for this beautiful poem and speak a little bit on some of the essential points that Prabhupada touches upon on this, speaks of. So the first verse is, my dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you brought me here. And now you can do whatever you like with me. But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they'll be able to understand it. But I know that your causeless mercy can make everything possible, because you are the most expert mystic. How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? O Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy, so that I will be able to convince them about your message. All the living entities have come under the control of the illusory energy by your will. And therefore, if you like, by your will, they can also be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. And therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message. The words of the Srimad Bhagavatam are your incarnation. And if a sober person repeatedly receives it with submissive oral reception, then he will be able to understand your message. And the verses, first canto, second chapter, verses 17 to 21. It is said in the Bhagavatam, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, the super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees who relish his message, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. And by regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is practically destroyed, and loving service unto the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. At the time loving service is established in the heart, The modes of passion are rajas, and ignorance, tamas, and lusts and desires disappear from the heart. And the devotee is established in goodness and becomes happy. Thus established in the mode of goodness, the man rejuvenated by loving service to the Lord gains liberation from material association, or mukti, and comes to know scientifically of the personality of Godhead. And thus the knot of the heart and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruit of actions, or karma, is terminated when one sees the self as master. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Kantaraj Bhagavan ki jai. So we'll continue. He continues his poem. He will become liberated from the influence of the modes of ignorance and passion, and thus all inauspicious things accumulated in the core of the heart will disappear. How will I make them understand the message of Krishna consciousness? I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and most fallen. And therefore I am seeking your benediction, so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. Somehow or another, O Lord, you have brought me here to speak about you. And now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me as successful or failure as you like. O spiritual master of the worlds, I can simply repeat your message. So if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. And I am sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel engladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So if you brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance, O Lord, make me dance as you like. I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I have been designated as Bhaktivedanta, and now, if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhaktivedanta. Signed, the most unfortunate, insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, aboard the ship Jaladuta, Commonwealth Pier, Boston, Massachusetts, USA. Dated the 18th of September, 1965. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupāda ki jai. Markini Bhagavat Mahotsava ki jai. So, beautiful, beautiful poem. Of course, we will usually recite and sing this poem and speak about it during Prabhupada's arrival to America, which we celebrate. Devotees will oftentimes go to Commonwealth Pier. Actually, the first celebration of sorts, actually Prabhupada celebrated with his disciples. We were hearing from Jadurani, also known as Syamarupa, when she was living in Boston. I think it was 67, 68, when Prabhupada first came to Boston to visit. He had been in New York for some time. He had gone to San Francisco. I know a temple was being established in Montreal. And so he came to Boston. And the first thing that he did, and the devotees came up from New York, from different places, is they all got into a van. I think it was Hamsaduta's van, which apparently was something of a death trap. But they all piled into the van, and Prabhupada took the devotees to where he arrived, in Boston's Commonwealth Pier. And he actually, on the Boston Harbor, there was like one of these signs, advertisement signs, and it said, unalloyed steel. And Prabhupada said, yes, this is actually our mission, but we're preaching unalloyed bhakti, ahaituki bhakti. No, nothing mixed with karma kanda, nothing mixed with jnana karma. So in this way, it was a very, in this way he took his disciples and they celebrated his arrival. And sometime later, I'm not sure, I think it may have been a Chitananda, but one of his disciples discovered his Jaladuta diary. And in that was this Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma. And so they took the liberty of translating it and they presented to Srila Prabhupada. He was very pleased. And he said that in the ISKCON songbook, this song, this Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma, should be the first song in the book. So Prabhupada, although of course he was very humble, understood the significance of this poem. This was not just an artistic reflection or some personal sentiment, but this was actually a prayer to Lord Krishna. He begins, Bodo Kripa Kare Krishna Adama Prati Ne Lagi Na Eta Kodo E Vigati. My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind to this useless soul, but I do not know why you've brought me here, and now you can do whatever you like with me. So here, right off the bat, we see that Srila Prabhupada is reflecting a beautiful humility and dedication to Krishna. Krishna, he knows that Krishna has some plan, but what is that plan? He said, Ache kibu taja kava e anumane, neho keno aniben e ugaristane. He said, but you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place, Ugaristan? There's a statue in the very front of the temple now of Prabhupada disembarking the Jaladuta. And there's a beautiful poem, he quoted a portion of this text. And the artist who created that beautiful work, I think he is in the Ukraine. I think he's a Ukrainian devotee. But he had the idea of putting this particular verse on the plaque, but he didn't. But why is it terrible? Because when Prabhupada wrote in his Jaladuta, he said, I took a walking tour of Boston. And Boston appears to be a nice city. And I'll write about this more later. So from an external point of view, Boston is a very lovely city. Those who come, it's these nice parks, you have tree-lined streets. Yes, but maybe back then it was maybe a little bit rougher and not as well economically situated as it is now. But he said it was a nice city. But the Ugaristan, what the Ugra quality, the horrible quality, or terrible quality that is being projected here, he will state in the next verse. Rajo Tamaguna era Sabai Achan Basudeva Kata Uchi Nahe Se Prashan. He said most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. And that's what makes it a terrible place. That being absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied. And therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they'll be able to understand it. So here he's noting what he witnessed in the culture during that day out with the captain. Well, the captain was buying provisions for his return journey back to India. Was that he saw it, people in restaurants, he probably saw people in parks. He witnessed how they were going about their day-to-day life. Far cry from India. And I would personally say that as a Westerner who grew up in America, has only been to India, a handful of times, it's more of a culture shock for me to come back to America than it is goes to India. Because in India, many places we go to, especially as devotees, we'll go to Mayapur or Navadvip, we'll go to Vrindavan, we'll go to Jagannath Puri. And in these places, even in a city like Delhi, which could be quite rough, there are temples everywhere. Big temples and even just little roadside little temples, by a tree, and they'll, have some murti of some goddess there. But transcendental spiritual culture is so alive wherever you go in these cities. And yes, there's material activities and so forth. but to be absorbed in this constant sound of mantras being recited, of Krishna or some other personality being, there's always this air, quality of, of transcendental engagement that when you come back to America, you don't see that on the street. Maybe you have churches, but the doors are closed. You have to go inside. Uh, so here, Prabhupada saw that everybody was engaged in eating, sleeping, all these activities, trying to establish, trying to create money, and therefore trying to inculcate and trying to bring this message of Krishna consciousness as a disciple of his once said, it must have been very daunting. Prabhupada saw that I don't know how they'll be able to understand this. So absorbed in material life, so absorbed, how they understand, break out from that complacency. But then he continues, Tabe jati, taba kripa, hoy ahoy tuki, sakale sambhava hoy, tumi se kutu. That I know that your causeless mercy can make everything possible because you are the most expert mystic. So Krishna, he is the cause of all causes. Everything can happen. He can manifest as he likes, right? But he allows the free will of the individual to enjoy and suffer as they like. Or if they turn to Krishna, then he can make all arrangements. So being the most expert mystic, so mystics, they can manifest things very well. They can transport themselves from here to there. They can make themselves very heavy, make themselves very light. So being the most expert mystic, uh, 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 Krishna can make the impossible possible. Can make even the rogues and the jaghais and the madhais here in America turn our hearts towards Krishna. And then Prabhupada continues to beseech Lord Krishna. He says, how will they understand the mellows of devotional service? He said, O Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message. I'll continue the next few points. All living entities have come under the control of the illusory energy by your will. And therefore, if you like, by your will, they can also be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. And therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, only then will they be able to understand your message. So this 3 verses here are so important. And actually, for me, reason why I bring up this particular poem every year, why I choose to either speak on it or uh, if some other senior devotee does not speak on it, are these 3 verses. Because this, as I said before, this poem, this juncture in Srila Prabhupada's life is not just some sentiment, but we understand that if the pure devotee of the Lord makes a request of Krishna for anything, because the Lord is sold out to his own devotees, and because his own pure devotees are sold out to him, he will move heaven and earth to make that manifest. So we understand that just as Advaita Acharya, who's none different than Sadashiva, prayed to the Lord for him to descend and establish his Sankirtan movement, or in the Chaitanya Mangala, how Narada Muni tried to establish Krishna, Sankirtan movement during the age of Kali Yuga, and being unable to do so, went directly to the spiritual world and with tears in his eyes begged the Lord to descend to deliver the people of Kali Yuga. So in the same way, we also understand that because Srila Prabhupada had made this request directly to Krishna, this was the point when we can understand that his mission was already a success. That of all the milestones of Srila Prabhupada's life, uh, uh, the time his father gave him Radha Krishna deity, the time that he established Rath Yatra as a child, the day that he met his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and received that order to travel to the English-speaking world, uh, uh, bringing this message of Krishna consciousness all around the world. So because his guru gave him that order, made that request, the potency to be able to fulfill that request is in the request. This is known as Chit Bala. Chit Bala means spiritual strength. How was Srila Prabhupada able to do what he had done? Because he achieved the impossible, blew everybody's mind in India. When I was in Vrindavan, oh gosh, that was like 2007. So they were having a celebration, they're observing Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, his Tiroba. It was during the month of Kartik. And it was in the Goshala in Vrindavan. And different speakers, and of course they had the Maharajas, Prabhupada's sannyas disciples. And then they had some Prabhus speak, some initiated, and then they had some Matajis speak. And then, they had some guests who were there. And one gentleman was from the Goswami family. I think one of the sons of the Radharaman temple. And they knew Prabhupada. This family had a very high regard for Srila Prabhupada. Maybe in the family that ran the Damodar temple, but I think it was the Radharaman temple. And he said, I remember, he used the word Swami Maharaj in a very respectful. So I remember Srila Swami Maharaj as a young boy, and he was always so saintly. And he was always speaking about Krishna, always enlivening us with katha about Krishna, and had such realization. But when he decided to go to America, nobody thought anything was going to happen, because others had gone, others had tried, and nobody succeeded. It just was, as Prabhupada said, it was just two different worldviews that were not going to connect. He said, but when we realized, when Prabhupada came back with his disciples, and we saw that he was establishing Krishna temples everywhere, he said, then I realized that as much as I liked him, then we realized what an empowered personality he was. Because we realized that only anyone who was empowered could do such a thing. He said, we were amazed. So this is the nature of the pure devotee of Krishna, who's empowered by the Lord. But where does that empowerment come from? Well, it comes from the order of their spiritual master. But it ultimately begins with the personality of Godhead. But who does he bestow that mercy to? To those who are sold out and completely humble. Pure bhakti and humility, they go hand in hand. You really cannot have one without the other. So therefore, Prabhupada, although he understood that the culture of the West and the culture of pure devotional service, of bhakti, were not compatible. And therefore he's wondering, how will they understand this sublime message? How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? The nature of bhakti. Not just the process of liberation, of being free from the cycle of birth and death, or how to aggrandize one's own position to become, take birth in a higher planetary system. But the mellows of this most sublime of secret of all secrets, Sarva Gyotama, right? He said, by praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them. So his ability to convince us, Prabhupada always saw as the blessing of Krishna. And by the Lord's will, all the living entities come under the control of illusory energy, of Maya. And therefore, by the Lord's will, they can also be released. And now Prabhupada is quoting Srimad Bhagavatam, this beautiful set of verses found in the first canto, where he's describing that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul in everyone's heart, is the benefactor of the truthful devotee, And he cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who hears this message, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. And by regularly hearing this Bhagavatam and rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the Lord is practically destroyed, and loving service unto the Lord can be established. So this is what was Prabhupada said. What is our mission? Sarva Sukhino Bhavantu, right? Let everyone become happy, right? This is what Prabhupada said, that his whole mission was to wage a war against the illusion, materialistic culture, so that everyone may become happy. Because when the culture of Rajaguna and Tamaguna, of exploitation, of negation, and so forth, only result in misery. And therefore, he continues to pray that such a personality who receives this message, as described in Bhagavatam, they will become liberated from the influence of the modes of ignorance and passion, and thus all the inauspicious things accumulated in the heart will disappear. This is the nature of bhakti. That automatically one becomes liberated when one connects with the personality of Godhead. And here Prabhupada again is addressing the Lord directly. He's saying, how will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? And again, following him, placing his head at the feet of the Lord, saying, I am very unfortunate, and I'm unqualified and the most fallen. Now we know that Srila Prabhupada was not unfortunate. He was most qualified, and certainly not fallen. But this is how a devotee thinks of themselves. This is how Mahaprabhu thought of himself when he was reciting the Shikshastakam. Ayi nanda tunuja kinkaram, patitanam vishame bhavambuddha, kripaya tava pankacha, stita duli sadisham vichintaya. That Mahaprabhu was praying, Ayi nanda tanuja kinkaram. Oh Lord, I am your servant, but somehow I fall into this cycle of birth and death. Now we know this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He never falls. But the nature of bhakti, the nature of ecstatic devotional service, is that the sense of humility comes naturally. So Prabhupada continues, and therefore I am seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. And Prabhupada again expresses his bewilderment as he expressed in the very first verse. Somehow or another, O Lord, you have brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me a success or failure as you like. Prabhupada said, if this is your desire, let it be. If it's not your desire, fine. He said, Akila Jagat Guru, Bachane Seyama, Alankrita Koribar, Kata Matatamar. O spiritual master of all the worlds, I can simply repeat your message. So if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. Prabhupada isn't saying, I'm going to water down your message so that it'll be suitable. I'm not going to sort of angle things in a way that is sort of politically correct. He's saying, I'm simply going to repeat your message. Right? So when Prabhupada wrote his translation and commentary on Bhagavad Gita, what did he call it? Bhagavad Gita as it is. Actually, the original title that he had in his manuscript was Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita as it is. So he had titled it Gita Upanishad. But what is this Gita Upanishad? It's the Bhagavad Gita as it is. No. But Prabhupada was able to speak on Bhagavad Gita. And if you read any other translation and commentary on Bhagavad Gita, at that time especially, since then other Gaudiya Vaishnava devotees have, they published Baladev's commentary and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary and Sridhar Maharaj's, these other commentaries. But at that time, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita was the only one that emphasized devotional service. There were hundreds of other translations of Bhagavad Gita, but mostly they're by Mayavadi or they're by academic scholars. I think there was William Butler Yeats had did a poetic version of Bhagavad Gita like that. So these different other Bhagavad Gitas were out there, but none had made devotees. None had dedicated their lives to devotional service. Uh, Keep an eye on time here, going on. So Prabhupada presented Bhagavad Gita as it is, because here he's saying, "O spiritual master of the worlds, I can repeat your message, but it is up to you to make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. Right? I am sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel engladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life." So Prabhupada knew that if somehow or another this message of Krishna consciousness were to enter the hearts of those who were hearing, it would be their lives would transform in such a way that they will experience a happiness they've never experienced before. This was his faith. And of course, this next verse is Prabhupada, uh, "O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So if you brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance, O Lord, make me dance as you like." So beautiful. The Bengali, Nacho, Nacho Prabhu, Nacho se mate. Kashta Putilo Jata, Nacho se mate. Make me dance. So Prabhupada, like Krishna said to Arjun, this war is going to take place. You can simply be but an instrument. But Prabhupada here is saying, I am Kinkara. I am your servant. I am like a puppet in your hands. So make me dance. What do you do with a puppet? With a marionette? You make them dance. And here Prabhupada expresses such not only deep humility, but his faith. Where does his faith lie? He says, I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. And I've been designated as Bhaktivedanta, and now if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhaktivedanta. So there was a nice, I think it was Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj, once asked Prabhupada's disciples why they felt that he was so successful in his preaching. And they, brought up different points. He said, actually, his qualification was that he had such faith in the holy name, that he had such unflinching, undying, unwavering faith in the holy name of Krishna, that that is what gave him his ability to preach. So here Prabhupada is expressing the same thing. He's saying, and of course we know that Prabhupada had deepest devotion and tremendous knowledge. But Prabhupada is saying, I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge. But this I will acknowledge. This I will actually state positively, that I have faith in the holy name of Krishna. I've been given this title of Bhaktivedanta, knowledge and wisdom. And now, if you'd like, you can fulfill the real meaning of this title that I've been given. So we are a couple minutes away. I don't know if I'll have time for any questions or comments. I'll leave that to the narrators or the monitors of this class. But I want to thank the Van Mali and the Temple devotees for inviting me to come speak. I hope I've been able to offer something of some value. If I've misspoken or made any errors, please forgive me. I live to be corrected. And thank you very much. Srila Abhay Chanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Markandeya Bhagavat Dharma ki jai. Gauri Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. We got some feedback.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class. So devotees, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. And if there are any devotees in the temple who wish to speak, you can come in front of the laptop that's kind of being used to project in the TV, and you can unmute that particular laptop and speak.
Yep. Okay. No worries.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Krishna.
Um, uh, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for your class. Thank you very much for your class, Prabhu. This was it was so enlightening, and it was so timely to hear it, because we just we just did Srila Prabhupada's arrival festival, and the Markan Bhagavat is something that I've heard of a lot, but I'd never attended a class. I'm fairly new to Krishna consciousness anyway, and so this was very, very helpful for me, and it is wonderful to see Srila Prabhupada's mood in this, where he sees himself as a servant of Lord Krishna, and he's saying, I had this was my realization after your class, Prabhu, but I had a question for you too.
Okay.
What inspired what inspired you to pick this topic? And it's such a beautiful topic. And what does the Markan Bhagavatam mean to you personally?
Well, thank you, Babu. This is, for me, this poem and this event of Prabhupada's arrival has been long. I'll put it this way. I used to work at the World Trade Center, which is where Commonwealth Pier is.
Prabhuji, I work there now. I've worked there for the last 6 years. The building's being reconstructed. I worked at the World Trade Center. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
So I used to always, during my breaks, go chant japa at the pier. And I didn't know much about it at that time. I didn't know this is where Prabhupada arrived. I knew he came to Boston. I don't know where in Boston. But then one day, my boss, who knew I was a devotee, came to me. He said, "Hey, Sam, your friends are outside." I'm like, "What do you mean, my friends?" They said, "There's a bunch of Hare Krishnas outside, by where Commonwealth Pier is." And I went there, and I'm like, "Why were the devotees there?" And they said, "Oh, because we're celebrating Prabhupada's arrival." And it was one of those moments where I realized that when I would go there to chant, I always felt like this was a holy place. Like I was imagining I was by the Ganga. There was something about that place. And then over time, I think with the devotees' inspiration, especially a godbrother of mine, he realized, he really impressed in my heart that the success of Prabhupada's mission was when he personally requested the Lord to empower him and make his ability to transmit Krishna consciousness. Because there are many wonderful devotees who came to Europe and even other places prior to Prabhupada, and they had little to no success. They made no impression. So for me, it was one of those moments where you realize that this was such a really pivotal, essential. This poem was more than just a nice sentiment of Prabhupada. I realized that this poem to me represents the Lord's mercy coming through his pure devotee. That we're the benefactors. Because if it wasn't for Srila, people in India knew about Krishna. But even then, many people who know about Krishna will worship Krishna with the idea of some kind of material prosperity or even liberation. But this idea of pure devotional service, regardless of where you're from, is really a very rare thing. And to transmit that and be able to communicate it and to make it explicable is a very rare and special thing. I don't think people really realize what a precious message that Prabhupada came to bring. What a unique and sublime message. Because we all have religion. I grew up in the Episcopalian church. Our friends were Catholic, they have devotion. And all of our religions are materially motivated or are mixed with the material motivation. Like our idea of heaven is like extended enjoyment. But this idea of bhakti, of Krishna consciousness, not for material motive, not for liberation, but just simply for the pleasure of Krishna. So that can only come by the mercy of the pure devotee. That can only come by the mercy of Krishna. So that mercy, that special kripa, that sublime message, that sublime gift was gifted that day. So for me, the Prabhupada's arrival, it's wonderful that he arrived. It's wonderful that his lotus feet touched, Boston's, all that, no doubt. But his composing, his prayer to Krishna is what really makes that holiday special for me. And that's why this poem is very important and why every year I try to speak on it. Or if somebody else is speaking, happy to listen. Does that answer your question or make it somewhat?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu, it makes it very clear. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to listen to your class again, and it was very wonderful, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu. I really appreciate your feedback and really appreciate your reflecting how it's the Prabhupada's own words moved you. So happy just to be the conduit. So I think there's a kirtan going on. Should we end? I don't want to keep devotees from hearing the Gora Arti.